Well, welcome to another installment, season 2 of Real Wealth Podcast. I'm Mike Proctor, the host, with Leading Edge Financial Planning as the sponsor. And today we have the pleasure of Jacob Wayman. He's allowing some of his time to go towards a podcast and share a little bit about how he's living the best life possible, or at least lessons he's learned along the way, and also a little bit about the entrepreneurial journey. So with Jacob, he's got quite the resume. He and I have met a couple different ways, but I think most relevantly, we're both in Wichita Downtown Rotary.
Yes, we are.
And you serve on the membership committee.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to rally people to go serve in different ways and super involved. Let's see, what else do? You started Orange Theory?
We purchased Orange Theory from the previous franchisee.
Purchased it. Okay.
Yeah, we did.
All right. Okay. So you own Orange Theory.
Mm-hmm.
You serve on the board of the Salvation Army.
Mm-hmm.
And you are an honorary commander at McConnell Air Force Base.
Yep.
What am I missing? And you broker HR. You broker
a broker
benefits.
The employee benefits is the other thing that I do. And I coach a flag football team too. So we just finished that season up a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay. And you're a coach. Well, wonderful. So you've got, kind of all the pieces together of like what a put together person might look like.
I still don't feel put together.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So but you're certainly out there in the community. Mm-hmm. You're known, you're making a lot of stuff happen, you're serving, you're very involved. And I'm really honored that you took the time to come join us and have a chat and just talk about, hey, what does it look like? What are lessons learned? What's your entrepreneurial journey and entrepreneurial lessons as well? Because it's hard to start a business. It's hard to juggle all the things that you're juggling right now. And also you're married, you got a couple of kids, they're young. And so how do you keep everything spinning? How do you keep it going? So I'm just excited to kind of have a chat today. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Orange Theory. What is Orange Theory?
Yeah, so Orange Theory is it's a franchise, and so we're a part of about 15 other Orange Theory locations throughout the world. So it's an international organization. But the whole premise of Orange Theory is it's heart rate based interval training. So a lot of people are familiar with high intensity interval training, but this is heart rate based. So it's a group fitness workout that everybody comes to, and it's class based, but everybody's wearing heart rate monitors in the class. And so it's being able to be personalized to you when you're working out based on your heart rate. Somebody said it really, really well. They said that the reason why they love this brand is because when they walked into a workout, they saw an ex-professional NFL football player working out next to a 75-year-old, he's a cancer survivor or something. Just basically a very big difference in like athletic ability, but they were doing the same exact workout, but it was personalized to them based on their heart rate. And so, it's hard to really explain it until you experience it, but it's something that, it really, it's a multivitamin of exercise is what it is. And, I preach it because I also work out there 5 to 6 days a week, but it's one of the best workouts it's for anybody who wants to try it. Nice.
What kind of workouts do you do when you're doing Orange Theory?
Yeah, so in Orange Theory, it's a combination of endurance, strength, or power. And in every workout, you're going to use our treadmills that we have. They're state-of-the-art flex deck treadmills that absorb a lot of the cushion into your knees, so you don't feel a lot of that pressure you would get when you run outside. Then we also incorporate water rowers. And so instead of most people do a lot of power movements by jumping up on boxes or squat jumps, those sort of things. We use rowers because it's less impact, and you actually use 85% of your muscles when you use a rower. And so we use those as well. And then we also do a combination of bodyweight movements, TRX straps, BOSU balls, and then we also have some dumbbell weights too as well. So the workouts are pre-planned. So when you walk into Orange Theory, you don't have to think about, well, what work am I going to do today? It's already pre-planned for you because our workouts are actually designed by a team of exercise physiologists in our headquarters down in Miami. And those are actually planned, designed, everything, and tested before they even get delivered into our workout facility. So it's not like somebody woke up in the morning and says, I think this workout's going to be really, really good. It's tested. And so the workout we do at Orange Theory here in Wichita is the same workout they're doing in Dallas, Los Angeles, Chicago, name your city where an Orange Theory is at. They're doing the same workout. So you build that bigger, larger community because everybody's doing the same workout in the day. and everything's tracked. And so we do a lot with technology. So a lot of the data that we are collected in the workout is all tracked. And so it's actually delivered to you in your hands, in your mobile app. I mean, we do a lot that keeps our brand sticky and people coming back so they can always be achieving something as they're going through the workout. Yeah, so it's, I mean, like I said, it's the multivitamin of workouts is what it is. Is what I tell people, because like, oh, you have to be super in shape to go to Orange Theory. I'm like, no, you don't. I said the hardest thing is showing up at Orange Theory, because there could be a person who's, running marathons that's working out in that class, but it could be somebody who's just getting started in their fitness journey, all working out in the same class together.
Wow. Yeah, because I did hot yoga once, and I think that the girl's name was Gina, and she's like notoriously hardcore.
Yeah.
And I was I was overheating, hyperventilating, had to leave. Yeah. Because I don't think I shed the heat enough.
Well, and that's the thing. The beautiful thing about Orange Theory is when everybody has heart rate monitors on, the coach that's leading the classes, they're taught and trained to watch people's heart rates. And we have mirrors in all our workouts too. And people think, oh, the mirrors are there for us to watch our form. They are, but it's also there for the coach to see faces, to understand, hey, what's their experience like? Because you can physically tell. You can tell if someone's physically exhausted, if something's going on, or their heart rate's over 100% of their max heart rate. They're able to watch that. So they're able to adjust that to the person. And so, it's not like, let's just throw them out there and see and hope that it works. It's, we're actually making sure that we're watching how they're doing it. We go through the process with them. And so it is one of the best workouts that I've ever done. I'll just be very honest with it.
Not biased at all, though.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
No.
But it's the best ever.
It is the best ever.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to come check it out at some point.
That's the thing, is I tell everybody's like, an excuse I hear a lot of is, well, I don't do cardio. I'm like, well, we make cardio fun is what we do. We actually make it enjoyable. People actually come out of there thinking, wow, I actually really enjoyed that side of the workout.
I like cardio. I just, I don't know if I always like doing it in the gym. I prefer going a walk on the river or something. Yeah. But
with ours, it's like, it's not just people get on a treadmill and run for 10 minutes straight. It's like there's intervals that you're being coached to, and then you're doing inclines, you're doing sprints, you're doing endurance runs. I mean, you're doing a lot of different things in that workout. But the beautiful thing is it's an hour.
And you're doing it with people.
You're doing it with people, with great music in the background, and you have that accountability to the people around you. But, in it, you're really competing with yourself and with people. That's what people find out when they get there. Like, wow, like this is actually something that I enjoy and it's fun. Mm-hmm. We make working hard fun.
What are my chances of getting injured? Like I've hurt myself before lifting?
So when we do the introduction process, they actually ask you what your injuries are. So if they say, you would say, hey, I injured my shoulder working out, and like, okay, so what limitations do you have right now? So we ask a lot of those questions ahead of time so we know what to prepare for in the workout. So the coach, when they're coaching, knows that, hey, they're going to need a modification with this workout. We're doing some shoulder press. They may say, okay, shoulder presses aren't going to be able to do them. So let's do something different. And so they're able to modify it to you. So you're not going to do the same thing everybody else is doing. You do what you can actually do.
So really customized.
Very, very customized. So it's group personal training is what it boils down to.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Okay. How is this increased quality of life for you?
Well, it kind of depends on when you ask me that question. So we bought, we bought Orange Theory in January 2020. So 2 months before the pandemic hit. And
seems like a great time to buy a gym.
At that time, it was actually a really good time to buy it. So we had actually been, and I can even go into more detail about how we got into Orange Theory, but Orange Theory was a very, very tough road to start with, because when the pandemic hit, no one really knew what to expect, what was going to happen.
Right.
When it was funny, we did a grand reopening with the Chamber of Commerce. So we did a ribbon cutting because we took over ownership and everything, had a party. That was on Monday, and we were shut down by Friday. And it's crazy how fast it happened. And so we were closed ended up being 90 days, I think. So we were closed, doors shut, 90 days. And, we didn't have any cash built up because we had just purchased it. When we were going through the payroll protection program, we almost got denied. We did get denied, and then we finally were able to get a bank to to come around and help and work with us. It was actually Emprise Bank that went to bat for us. But because our entities didn't exist in 2019, we had no W-2 employees, we had no payroll to go by, so there was nothing there. I mean, granted, we bought a business that had employees, but we had set up a whole new entity, so nothing existed. And so, that was hard. And then when we reopened to being at 50% capacity for a little over a year. And what we bought it for, we lost about 60% of our members when we reopened. And so just trying to go back and get them. I mean, and the thing is, debt is still out there. You still have to pay down your debt. It doesn't go away. And so, we had built our pro formas based on the membership we bought it for, not necessarily the membership that we got after the pandemic or when we reopened in the middle of the pandemic. So, so back to your question about quality of life, at that time, very stressful. I tell people I had hair before the pandemic. COVID didn't steal my hair. I didn't actually get COVID to get my hair stolen, but the stress of it took it. And so it was just very difficult to go through that process because, I was trying to balance what my staff wanted during COVID. So a lot of them didn't even want to come to work anymore. And ours, we didn't have the luxury of remote work. I mean, we're a fitness facility. People have to physically be there. We did do some like at-home workouts, but we weren't charging our members for that because it's like, that's not what they pay for their membership for, Orange Theory. And so, it's balancing that, but then also balancing having our members coming back into the studio too. And some of our members were like religious about wearing their masks. Some hated the mask. And we were trying to balance that more or less political nightmare, just trying to figure out, how do we all exist in this world and we can still deliver a great workout. And what we tried to tell people was like, when you come to Orange Theory, that's your 1 hour of refuge. You check your politics at the door, you check what's happening in your work at the door, you check out what's happening in your family at the door. Everything is left at the door and you come here to work out. This is your refuge. And honestly, we did really well with that. We're now back at full capacity and, and looking at it now, like the quality of life that we are experiencing now is great because now my wife is full-time at Orange Theory because the whole goal when we bought it was I was only going to stay in there for about 6 months full-time. I was going to get it back to, because it wasn't failing. It just wasn't performing as well as it could be because the previous owner was living out of state. And so he wasn't here a lot, absentee. And it's not one of those businesses you can be absentee. You have to really invest the time in it. And so the goal was she was going to come full time. But when the pandemic hit, we both decided you need to stay full time in this. And then she stayed being a school nurse. And so now her life was also stressful being a school nurse and trying to keep kids in school, all that stuff. So we had a really stressful time during COVID with trying to keep a business open and she tried to keep a school open too. So, but fast forward to now, things are really good. We just signed a lease for a downtown location. We'll be announcing that location at the first of the year. So I'm really, really excited about that. And then there's some talks of some acquisition opportunities out there too as well right now. So things are pointing in the right direction, and things are good now. But the pandemic was a very interesting time. I learned a lot about myself during that time.
Wow. Yeah. That was a stressful time.
Well, it's funny because so my wife and I got married in August of 2019.
Oh.
And we bought the business in January of 2020. So literally a couple months after we got married, we started the process of buying it. And I also got fired from a 6-figure job 2 weeks into us getting married too. So it was kind of in a weird place. I got let go from this position and I said, hey, what do I want to do? And, I had always dreamed of being an entrepreneur, a small business owner, and because I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. And so I just started cold calling a lot of organizations, and I knew I loved fitness, and my wife loved fitness, and I loved the business model of Orange Theory. And so I just cold called the owner at the time and we're able to get it done. But again, it goes back to if I wouldn't have gotten let go from that job, we wouldn't be the owners of Orange Theory Fitness right now.
So that wasn't any relational connection. That was just a cold call to an owner.
My wife actually was a trainer or is a trainer at Orange Theory. She was a trainer at that time.
Okay.
So, he knew of me, but I never knew him personally though. What he saw in my wife and I was a young couple that had a dream and he saw a lot of him and his wife in us. And so, he could have sold it to anybody, but he decided to sell it to us. And, I don't take that lightly because, like I said, it's a brand that a lot of people enjoy and they like, and he could have sold it to anybody, but he chose to do with us because he saw something in us. But again, it's like, timing's everything. Things happen for a reason. And you just have to kind of look back on that and realize that there's God's hands in it in a lot of different ways. And you got to just trust his timing because it's his time, not your time. And when I got let go from that job, I thought it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I just got married. I had a great job. We were actually looking at houses because she lived in a small house in College Hill, and we were looking at that, and we didn't buy something, thank goodness. But it was a kick in the gut because I didn't see it coming. It was like they were like, this isn't working out. I'm like, okay, awesome. So, so that's a little bit in a nutshell, like that part of my life. A lot of stuff before that on how I got into the entrepreneurial world in Wichita and everything, because I actually went to school to be a hospital administrator of all things. Yeah. So
sounds kind of close.
Yeah, a little bit. I have my master's in hospital administration and my MBA as well. And so that's what I wanted to be when I was in school, was to run hospitals.
But yeah, so do you guys get into like education with your members on how things work, or like is it focused on the physical, or is it more than just the physical? Or
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, Orange Theory as a brand is very focused on, we are a workout. That's what we do. We don't get into nutritional coaching. We don't get into a lot of other things, but we bring in partners from the community who do some coaching like that. So we bring in people that do nutritional coaching. We bring people in that, focus on mobility, certain things to, help your whole body and everything too. But Orange Theory, I mean, it's a lot of people mistakenly call it Orange Therapy, but it really is Orange Therapy. I mean, it's really that place that people feel like they can go and just mentally check out and be a better version of themselves. And that's one thing that I love about Orange Theory is it's the idea of more life. That's our tagline, is more life. And because what you do in Orange Theory helps you do more outside of Orange Theory. So I'll use a member for an example that she was never able to throw her kids up in the air, like lift them up over her head. Coming to Orange Theory, we were able to give her the ability, the strength, the stamina to be able to throw her kid up in the air. I mean, that's the quality of life that we give people, is those sort of things. I mean, there's been stories of somebody who's come in who's been on tons of heart rate medications and been able to get off of every one of them because of Orange Theory. Some people find themselves, they feel they're a better mother, they're a better father, they're a better business owner, they're a better business professional, they're a better just person because of coming to Orange Theory. I mean, I had a friend of mine who he actually tore his rotator cuff, and so he was out of Orange Theory for a while, and his physical therapist finally said, you can go back. And he's like, I felt different not being there. I could see a difference. He was not just necessarily my waistline, but just more of my mental state. And I think that's something that is, Orange Theory is much more than a workout. Yes, we are a workout, but we're much more than a workout. We're a community, we're, a place that, helps people be better versions of themselves.
Cool.
Yeah. The philosophy of Orange Theory is amazing. Like, and you go, I mean, we had our convention a couple months ago, and, it was the first one we had since the pandemic. So, that was a lot of fun to be around everybody, but just kind of, you felt that energy from people of just, what the impact Orange Theory makes, just on a day-to-day basis with members. It's very, very cool.
Nice. So it started off a little rocky,
Mm-hmm.
and it's gotten better, and things are looking good moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I'm curious to learn more about what you mean by you grew up in an entrepreneurial family.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, my dad, I can start even with my grandpa. So my grandpa, he was a plumber by trade. So plumber by trade, he was actually the head of facilities for Wichita State University for a number of years. But on the side, he actually did a lot of commercial real estate. He owned a lot of commercial properties, maintained all of them. He did everything himself. And so, growing up, I was always working on his properties. So if I could sit on a mower and mow a lawn, I was mowing his properties. And my dad actually was started out as a mechanic. So my dad was a mechanic, and he and my uncle opened up a mechanic shop in Derby. And they were a mechanic shop, and then they got into service stations, and it was right before like Quick Shop and Quick Trip became a really big thing. They were doing that, and then they saw kind of the they saw Quick Shop and Quick Trip all coming in and everything too, and so they felt like they needed to pivot a little bit, so they got into car washes. And so they were in the car wash industry up until the Great Recession hit, and then that's kind of when their business decided they had to pivot real hard or close. And so they ended up trying to ride it out, and they didn't ever file for bankruptcy, which I'm very, very proud of my dad for, but it did a big number on him. It was very, very hard on him, his health, our family, lots of different things. But, that's where I kind of learned what it meant to work hard, and the sweat. Because my grandpa always said when I complained about working on a Saturday, he'd say there's no child labor laws in family businesses. And so, but I learned a lot. I look back on it now. My grandpa passed away a few years ago, but it's funny that I see a lot of things that he taught us, because he was the handyman guy, and we always were working on stuff, whether it be plumbing, electrical. The one thing that we did with car wash is I had to clean the mud pits. So that you go to Douglas, Kansas, where we had one of our car washes, and the mud pits were nasty. The stench of them were bad. And so we didn't have the best equipment to clean out those mud pits, so we made do with it, but I would be covered in just whatever was in that mud pit. But it taught me a lot. But also with my dad, he taught me what resilience was, and still to this day teaches me resilience. So when he had to make a lot of sacrifices. He could have gone and made a lot of money. So my dad's a beautiful salesman. He can sell anything. He's very, very good at it. But he loved being his own boss, and he could have made a lot of money elsewhere, but he kept doing it, and he knew why he was doing the business, because he did not want to file for bankruptcy. That was the one thing, because he knew that would impact us. It would impact my grandpa. It would impact a lot of people in our family. And so he was very relentless about that not happening. And so finally got to a place to where he just closed up shop and everything and went to work for somebody else. And so 6 years ago, a little over 6 years ago, he and my oldest brother decided to venture out into a franchise called Citywide Maintenance. And it was very risky for my dad. Because he was 60 years, 58. Yeah, he was 58 years old when he decided to launch Citywide with my brother, and he cashed out all of his 401k, everything at the age of 58 years old to do this job, to do this thing. They're now the fastest growing Citywide Maintenance franchise, and just opened up Des Moines and Northwest Arkansas, and are doing, my dad's is probably making the most money I've ever seen him, make. And I'm just super proud of him. But that's what I grew up in, was just that, and that mentality of being relentless, but always putting family first though too, because that's what he always did. He was always there for us when we were growing up. I never not saw him at a basketball, football, baseball game. He actually coached me in football from 2nd grade to 6th grade. I never saw him not there, but the guy would still work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, but he would leave earlier in the morning, so he could be there for our games and our practices. So yeah. So that's where a lot of my entrepreneurial comes from, is from my family, and just being around that on a daily basis.
Have you ever gotten into studying epigenetics?
I have not.
Okay. Well, that may be a rabbit hole you go down at some point. Okay. I got a book I can recommend.
Yeah.
I think it's called so it doesn't go ultra deep. There's some different guys. So Huberman Labs. You ever come across that?
Yeah.
I think he has some podcasts that maybe touch on it. Or go really deep. I haven't listened to all of his, but this other books, I think it's Switch on Your Brain.
Okay.
But she goes really deep into that generational, how your thoughts actually activate different parts of your genetics.
Yeah.
And pass to the 3rd and 4th generation. So anyways, but yeah, that's so cool that from your grandpa, so my grandpa, he had some rental properties, and so, same thing. I was 8.
Yeah.
Mixing concrete with him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 But I look back on it, and I learned so much from him. lot of cuts and bruises and everything that came from it, but learned so much that I use to this day when I'm working on my own house, and just knowing how to do certain things with my hands that I learned from him. So it was it was a blessing. But it's funny, like all of my community service actually, I mean, my dad was very active, like, well, yeah, I mean, I did get that from my family of being active in the community, because my dad was a city councilman for 10 years in Derby. And then my grandpa, on my mom's side of the family, he was a state representative for 20 years. But it was when I was in Kansas City, actually, my first boss out of grad school, she invited me to a lot of different things. And I really never understood why she was inviting me, but she would invite me to like the chamber board meetings that she was on the board for up there. She invited me to a lot of things and just immersed me in a lot of stuff. But what really elevated my interest in being involved in the community was Rotary, and is because somebody invited her to a Rotary club in Kansas City, but she couldn't go. And so she asked me to fill in for her instead. And so that's my introduction to Rotary. And Rotary's kind of been the thing that's been like my core, my grounding. I've been a Rotarian for a little over 10 years now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So you were really bucking the numbers on the younger side.
I tell people I feel like I've lived my life in reverse, because most people don't really get involved in the community until their latter years of their career. Whether it be right before retirement, after retirement, they say, that's when I have the time to be able to do it. But it's like, I got very active when I was, 24 years old, and, and it was, and I had a lot of time at that time. I mean, I didn't have no kids. I had, I had all the time in the world outside of, my job, but I was able to be involved and actually invest my time at that time. So now it's like, I said yes then, so I can say no now. I said yes all the time back then. I mean, said yes to everything. When somebody would ask me to get involved, volunteer with something, I said yes all the time. And, it's paid dividends for me. I mean, there's still a lot of years left to see, what the next thing is. But, I've been able to see a lot of professional development and a lot of growth in me just through being really active in the community.
Nice. Are you looking at getting involved in city council or state rep or anything like that?
I've had a lot of people ask me that question, if I want to be involved in politics. I don't know the answer to that question. It's not a yes. It's not a.
I see you voted.
No. I did vote.
You got the sticker.
Vote. That's something that I am very, very big in. And just, it's your civic duty and everything too. But I could see myself eventually being involved in politics. I don't know at what point though. My wife told me she would never be a mayor's wife, and so I know I can't run for mayor. But yeah, so I don't know. That's something that Ryan Beatty's, who's a good friend. He's been on me for a long time about trying to run and everything, and so
where do you live?
Not in his district. I wish
he's 4, right?
Yeah, I'm in 1. Okay. I'm in 1 Pete Meitzner district.
Okay. Yeah. I'm out in Goddard. So I think that's Dave Dennis's district.
I think that's Dave Dennis. Yeah. So
now we're getting into local politics.
Yeah. Local politics. They'll leave the politics there, but yeah, maybe eventually. Yeah. So it's not yes, not no. Yeah.
But yeah, very cool. But that's really great to have that foundation laid by, a couple generations of entrepreneurialism and public service and, tenacity. What was the word used?
Relentless.
Relentless. Yeah. Yes.
Read the Tim Grover book, Relentless.
Okay.
Tim Grover was the trainer for Kobe Bryant. I think he did a little bit with Michael Jordan. Who was the other one that he did too? Dwayne Wade. But it's a really good book. Short read, but it's called Relentless.
Oh, it's a short read?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The 2 books that I highly recommend everybody read is Relentless and The Go-Giver. Have you ever heard of The Go-Giver?
I think I've seen it.
Yeah.
It looked neat.
It's a fictional book. It's a fictional business book and very short, but that's how I live my life, is from The Go-Giver. And if you read the book, you'll understand. It's about, always having the giver mindset. Don't be a taker. I don't know, have you heard of Adam Grant's his podcast or his talk I think it's a TED talk that talks about givers and takers. And anyways, but like it talks about like takers like seem to always be ahead of everybody. They're the ones that always, make all the money, all these different things, but when they really dove into deeper into the numbers, the givers are actually the ones that are the ones that, are ahead of everybody. And so, but anyways, the Go-Givers are really another good book too.
Cool. Okay. Well, I read a lot of books and with my ears primarily.
Yeah. Those are two that you can get both those books done in less than 4 hours if you read them on Audible or listen to them on Audible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rate of consumption for me, being able to listen to a book is so much faster than reading.
Yeah.
And in how I'm wired, I retain it.
Yeah.
As well.
100% agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, you got the entrepreneurial bug.
Mm-hmm.
You got Orange Theory. You're expanding.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the struggle with COVID, which I can't even imagine the heart attack that I would have if I were in the same position. I mean, this business was hard enough.
Yeah.
Because the market tanked.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was, it was tough enough. But to have a business that's based on people showing up en masse.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. It was, I look back on it now and sometimes I laugh. I'm like, I get stuff on my Facebook, my time hops and everything of things that I posted back then. And I have to laugh sometimes with some of the stuff that we did, just to, try. I don't know what our thought process was, but some of the things were like, I think at the time it was like, hey, this sounds like a good idea. But just trying to get more people to feel more safe about coming into the studios, or, different marketing tactics we would take on, just something that would, encourage people to come into our studios. But, I will say being a part of a franchise was very helpful because you were in it with other people. You had that network of other people that were going through it as well. I will say during COVID was when I really valued mastermind groups, or at least other business owners. Just being able to talk to other people that weren't Orange Theory people, that I could just talk to about just what my struggles were, what things I was going through. It was stressful because even during that we got pregnant with our little guy, and had a baby in the middle of all that too. And so it was, my wife and I we live our lives 100 miles an hour. Like that's the way we operate in everything that we do. I don't think it's ever going to stop, but that's the way we that's the way we roll. But yeah,
cool. So did they let your wife and the fetus in the same room during that time, or they make you guys stay separate?
It was like we did Wesley Birth Care Center, and they were phenomenal. Like it was great. Like there was a time when even the OBGYN, like that there was talks I wasn't going to be able to be back there. And right. I'm like really? And so it's funny when you look back on all the things that we did and you're like, you just scratch your head and just wonder. But, I will say it made me appreciate, being a business owner more afterwards, because if we would have, got in there and instantly had instant success, made, all this money, whatever, had all this success coming at us, I don't think we would appreciate like we do now. We're still reeling from it. We're still, clawing our way back to getting back to, positive in a lot of different places, but, we're doing good now, but we appreciate it a whole lot more. I think what I learned is, managing people is hard. And in our business, our employee makeup is mostly college students or just right out of college, probably under 30 years old, and understanding how do they like to be managed? How do they like to be led? Very different than how I want to be led. And because I'm one who I don't need someone to tell me what to do. I will just go and get it done. And just learning how to manage people and managing people in the middle of a pandemic was tough. But I learned a lot about myself that I shouldn't be the one leading the day-to-day operations at Orange Theory. I love strategy. I love finance. I love all the big picture stuff. And I like where things are going to go 2-3 years down the road. But the day-to-day stuff, I hate getting caught up in that stuff. And I wasn't the right person for it. And so we promoted somebody into that role. Her name's AJ, and she's a phenomenal leader in our organization and been with the organization before we even bought it. And so we promoted her to director of operations. And ever since she's taken that role on, it's just like the culture shifted in a much better way amongst our team. and it's been phenomenal. But I mean, that was a realization I had, was I'm not a good manager of people. I know that's, I mean, because people, they don't teach that in school, how to, entrepreneurship. They everybody gets excited about entrepreneurship, about, oh, you're a business owner, you own your own business. But when you have a business, there's people behind it, and you're the leader of those people. You're supplying their paycheck, you're supplying them with security, you're supplying them with all these different things, and you got to nurture them and everything too. And you need to find the right people to be in the right positions. And that's what I learned with me, is like, I'm not that right person. I remember when I've made some of my employees cry, and I didn't mean to do it, but it was just, we were all in a very tense environment, and, and things were very just intense the entire way around. But, yeah, that's one thing that I learned, was I focus on the big picture stuff. That's what I love to do. That's why I'm transitioned back into employee benefits brokering, because it's, I love B2B sales. I love that B2B environment, and I'm able to do that. But then also I love being an entrepreneur. The one saying I'm able to focus on things that I really enjoy doing, which is going to put myself in my strength zone.
Nice. Okay. So what's, I guess maybe what's, like, looking forward, what's your next challenge, or what's your kind of your next area of focus?
Yeah. That's a great question. When I look at the entrepreneurial side, it's that decision you have to make, is what type of business owner do you want to be? Everybody thinks that when you become an entrepreneur, you have to, I'll use a startup. When people say, when you're in a startup, everybody thinks that what you want to do is you want to scale and be, $100 million company, but, with $100 million comes $100 million stresses. I mean, that's what comes with it. And it's making that decision about what you want to do and being able to grow that. For me, it's now looking at, okay, I do want to grow, but how do we grow? What's manageable growth? That's the biggest thing, is if I wanted to go, buy into 3 other franchises if I wanted to, or I wanted to go acquire a bunch of Orange Theories in other markets, I could go do that. They're out there if I wanted to do that. But do I want to do that? Old me would probably said, yes, let's go. Now me is like, okay, let's manage this growth. Cause I get stuck in this place of, not necessarily imposter syndrome, but I get in this place of, well, like, there's always got to be something more. There's always something more. And, and it's like, I always feel like it's hard, because sometimes I don't ever feel fully satisfied. Like I want to keep going and keep growing and keep building. But it's like, at some point it's like, okay, well, how do you create blessings about what you currently have? And, and fully maximizing that. So for me, like, if I would have told you 5 years ago I'd be where I'm at today, I would have been totally, completely wrong. I mean, 5 years ago, I still wanted to be a hospital administrator. Well, no, wait. 5 years ago, what was I doing 5 years ago? 5 years ago, I was actually helping start companies in Wichita. That's a whole nother story. That can be my past. When I moved to Wichita, how my life kind of took a major turn. But no, like, in 5 years, I have no idea where I'm going to be at. What I'd like to be known for in 5 years is a business owner and a business professional that cares about people, that invests in his community, invests in those around him, and, is a person who, when he's a value added when he walks in the room. He's not, oh, great, here comes Jake when he walks in the room. It's like, no, great, Jake's here. Like, you bring joy to the room. Like, that's what I want to be known for, is that type of person in 5 years. Whatever that means when it comes to business, we'll see what that happens. But, I'm along for the ride.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So 5 years, you're going to be known as the Jake that brings joy.
Yeah, that's
joyful Jake.
Yeah, joyful Jake. Sometimes I'm not so joyful. But yeah, it's interesting how your mindset shifts when, as you've probably known this, see this with being a business owner too, is like, what you started out as and why you started your business is very different sometimes than where you're at today. That changes, and like, it's the conversations I have with people have changed too. And people who I used to see as, people I would hopefully, have as a customer or want to, do business with or something like that. It's like now my conversations with them is like, it's more of friendship more than anything, more than trying to do business together, which is very cool.
So Joyful Jake, you got okay. So I was just given this Mark. Mark, he owns Doc 410. It's a furniture store. And they used to do a ton of, or they still do a lot of customized furniture, but now he shifted to art. And I think at some point we'll have him fill that wall in with something really cool.
Yeah.
But we're out Friday night, and he gave me this verse, and it's Romans 15:13 from the Passion Translation. I'll just share it. Now may God, the fountain of hope, fill you to overflowing with uncontainable joy and perfect peace as you trust in Him, and may the power of the Holy Spirit continually surround your life with His superabundance until you radiate with hope. For Joyful Jake.
So when I moved back to Wichita 6 years ago, I was actually an employee benefits broker at the time. That's what I moved back to Wichita for. But I got really involved in helping launch entrepreneurial initiatives in Wichita. And so that's part of my entrepreneurial journey, was being engaged with startup companies, those sort of things. So I was part of the original crew that helped start 1 Million Cups in Wichita.
Cool.
And then I helped start EDE Accelerator, which is now called Nextus. So the first business accelerator, I was one of the crew that helped start that and launch that. And we worked with about 20 early stage companies with that process. And then I was on the original crew that started Startup Grind, which Startup Grind's still active, but the girl who runs it now is on maternity leave, so it's kind of taken hiatus a little bit.
Okay.
But so I mean, that's what I was involved with a lot prior to doing what I do now on the entrepreneurial world. I was just very passionate. I still am very passionate about moving the city forward. And I think the core of moving the city forward is entrepreneurship. Because, that's where net new jobs come from, is that, and there's just pure innovation that comes from entrepreneurship. And, entrepreneurship can be anything from, it doesn't have to be the latest, greatest tech startup or app or anything like that. Cause a lot of the new businesses that are going to be widely successful aren't sexy. Steve Case, the founder of AOL, wrote a book called The Third Wave. And that talks exactly about that, of the third wave of technology is the unsexy technology. It's the thing that actually solves real problems. It's not like Facebook or Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, whatever. I mean, those things serve their purpose, but he's talking about things that like look at a real problem, how do you solve it? And they're going to be started in cities like Wichita. And so that was kind of what drove a lot of the things that we did. I also was part of an organization called Shift ICT. And we hosted a big summit in 2018 where we brought people in from all of our sister cities that are doing some great stuff. And we brought them together to like share what they're doing. But yeah, I think, because that's where a lot of my getting more engaged in the entrepreneurial community of Wichita on a much larger scale was because of that. And that's what led to a lot of what I do now is that's why I was able to, find my partners that are investors of mine that are in Orange Theory, was through those efforts. I've been able to build a community through those things, but it was just simply because I looked at Wichita and I said, okay, what can we do for the future? I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. How am I going to, I want a community that I want to live in 20 years. What does that look like? I want a community that my kids can grow up in, that they can be proud of. They can say, I'm from Wichita, be proud of that. I don't say they have to stay in Wichita after they, graduate, but it's like, I want them to be proud of their hometown.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I love Wichita, and I'm a little biased, but I also love Goddard. So,
hey, you know what? I grew up in Derby and I love Derby. So yeah.
No, I love this area. It's such a good space. Couple things I want to make sure to talk about before we're done. Out of curiosity, total shot in the dark, have you ever done any Enneagram work?
Yeah, I'm a 3.
Okay. I wondered because you were talking about imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I'm a 3. Yeah, I got forced to doing it when we did our premarital counseling. So I'm
Hey,
at 3.
good.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I've done a lot of the personality tests that are out there. So yeah,
What other ones have you done, if you want to share?
So Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENTJ. The DISC, I'm a high D, high I. Let's see, what was the other one that I did? Another one, I'm considered a builder. I don't know what that one is, but and it was a lot of things that I do. Like when I did the DISC, the name that came up for me was I was a challenger. Like that's what I'm like. I'm a challenger, and I'm always focused on challenging the status quo and a lot of things. But yeah,
I'm a maverick.
You're a maverick. Nice. I like that. I'd rather be a maverick.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, sounds cool. Trying to think, what other ones have I done? Strength finders. Did that. Futuristic and competitive are like my top ones. Then I did one that's no longer around, but it was the entrepreneurial strength finders. And the one of my top ones was independent, which I think case in point of why I'm not a good manager of people, because I'm a very independent.
Take some collaboration.
Yeah, I'm a very independent person, and that's what I love about sales, is because it's like I need to be the one to go out and do it.
Yeah.
But
Right.
that's
Yeah, that's fun. Have you ever? So I stumbled across this, and it nailed me. So I combined my Myers-Briggs with my wing, so I'm a 1 wing 9.
Okay.
And then on, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Enneagram 1 wing 9. Myers-Briggs, I'm an INTJ.
Okay.
So those together.
Okay.
If you Google that, it's really interesting.
Okay.
Because so an INTJ isn't normally sorry for the tangent, whoever isn't familiar with these, but the INTJ isn't typically a 1. Most of them are 5s.
Okay.
And so I just never quite connected with that one.
Yeah.
But then you go combine them and search that. There's so many resources out there.
Yeah.
That was really fun.
What was it? I'm trying to think of the one that was very interesting. It'll hit me later. There were so many that I had to go through.
Yeah. There's the yeah, I've done more too than that's. Yeah, high D, high I here as well. So funny though, you learn a lot about yourself. They're fun. They're great for growing personally and also just relationship wise, understanding yourself and understanding how different you are from other people.
Yeah.
And how different they are from you, uniquely.
Yeah. It's funny, kind of back to Orange Theory. It's I do a lot of personal development for myself. I do a lot of personal leadership development for myself, and I wanted to do it for my team, but I almost had to it had to become their idea to want to engage in that. And so we did.
Are you gonna let them know that you kind of manipulated them into it, or where are we going here?
No, that's like that. But but my point is when we finally got to that place to be able to do team development together, and we actually did one of the personality tests, it just opened a whole lot of doors to understand each other. And that's what we saw a big change in everybody when that happened. A lot more trust was built between each other.
Okay.
And we realized why people do what they do.
Yeah.
Why does this person think this way? Why does this person think this way?
Yeah, we did that too. Okay, this was a fun group activity we did. Have you guys ever done breath work with Brooke Genter?
Uh-uh.
All right. So she did it. I experienced it twice in a group setting. The first time was Matt, Lily, and they would put on kind of like a personal development day or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that she was the cap. She kind of capped off the day.
Yeah.
And that was wild. So I did another podcast with Brooke.
Okay.
But so whether you do it just with yourself to try it out, or have her come in and have all your people do breath work together, that was so cool. It's fun.
Okay.
So I had the guys do it here, and they were like, "What just happened?" It's so crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got a podcast that focuses on that. What was the other thing I was going to ask you about? Mentors. So who would you mind sharing a little bit about who you'd consider to be a mentor, and maybe what you like?
Yeah.
How that helped you develop?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a formal mentor that but I have a lot of people that I look up to, that I seek out for advice. One I mentioned earlier is Ryan Beatty. Ryan Beatty is a good friend of mine who I really look up to as a business owner, and just for what he stands for as an individual. That he's been able to build very successful businesses and has gone through a lot in those businesses, but he still, is there for his family, his faith, and everything too. And so I, look up John Rolfe's another one who you're going to have here on this podcast too. It's another one that I, look up to. I wouldn't, we wouldn't say we have a mentor-mentee relationship, but he's a guy that I look up to a lot. Kara Hunt, another, she's in our Rotary Club. She's like my adopted big sister is what I kind of refer to her as, but
you'll have to introduce me sometime.
Yeah, she's amazing. Actually just had lunch with her right before I came here. Cool. But so those are a few that are there. I mean, but I glean a lot of stuff from a lot of people, and what I love about Wichita is you can get lunch or coffee with just about anybody you'd like to. And if you just have an open ear to want to learn and listen, and then one of my mentors, his name's Sam Moyers. He's an older gentleman. He used to work at Brenna Center, Pizza Hut, all the major organizations that were started here in Wichita. But he's been one who's been, done a lot for me. He's in his 80s, but he's just full of a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and I really value him. But yeah, I think it's finding, it's just finding people that, you not necessarily care about the same things, but you care about each other and care about getting better. So I'm in a lot of like peer mentoring groups too. One thing that I do miss is I had a group of guys that we used to get together on a weekly basis. And it was like a men's prayer group that we did. And the gentleman who was kind of our stickiness factor, he was one of my good friends in Wichita, was Thomas Stanley, who he worked for Kansas Leadership Center and was struck by lightning when he was doing a 50K. This happened back in 2019. And so, that's something that was, had a really big impact on me when that happened. Cause he was like, he was only a couple years older than I am, but I looked up to him as a father, how he was with the kids, as a husband, as a business person in this community too. But, yeah, I mean, kind of your original question is I have a lot of people I look up to in this community, that I, regular basis, get coffee with, get lunch with, but I look to see, it's like certain people, there's certain people I aspire to be in a business setting, certain people I aspire to be as a father, certain people I aspire to be as a husband. And, and those are the people that I look to, because then piecing them all together too.
That's so good. And you can't pass on what you never receive. And so, and I think a reality is we all grow up with whatever family we have or whatever natural relationships we start out with, but nobody's perfect and nobody's fully developed at any point in time. And it's on us to go figure out, hey, if I figure out I don't quite have this together, like, hey, I want to go find somebody and get some time with them and learn. That's really cool. Yeah. What's one, just maybe to wrap it up, what's one lesson that you think is just critical for any entrepreneur that they need to, that you would want to pass on to them?
That's a great question. Don't forget what's important in life. I lost sight of that, in terms of, and what I mean by that is my family and my faith. When I get very focused on something, I get hyper focused on it. And like, it's like the only thing that I see, it's like, this is where I'm at, and I forget about everybody around me. Don't forget what's important in life. I think you need to go, if you are looking to become an entrepreneur, business owner, what have you, whatever you want to call it, is, take an inventory of your life, and really ask yourself those hard questions of what do you want to become? You can become the most successful person in the world financially, but you could be a horrible person. I mean, like it's, somebody said it the other day, great business people are not necessarily good people, and
that's a really sad dystopian statement.
Yeah. Cause like people who aspire to be, I'll use Elon Musk for an example, people like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be him. I mean, it's like, I want my kids to know that I love them, that I care about them, that I invested my time in them. Same with my wife. I want her to know that, I love her. I care about her. I want her to be the best version of herself. But I'm not gonna, at times I let the business get in the way of that. There were certain things. There's a friend of mine is getting ready to have their first baby, and I told him, and I was like, can I share some advice? I said, don't waste those first 8 weeks. I did. I was so focused on Orange Theory in those first 8 weeks that I missed a lot of stuff. I would just, and I regret that, but I mean, now I know that moving forward, and I'm very intentional, and kind of back to I'm involved in a lot of things, but I'm relentless about my time management. I have very specific times like blocked out for certain things, and it's a trial. It's hard to do, but it's something that, everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. It's how do you use those 24 hours in a day?
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I can tell you're just a super hard driver, and so good for you for learning that earlier than later, on how to manage balance, keep proper focus. Thanks, Jacob, for coming on and sharing what I guess your beginning or mid-stride of living the best life possible looks like. And thank you for being tenacious with Orange Theory, so we don't have, multiple gyms failing.
Well, we don't want anybody to get the dad bod. We want the sexy dad bods out there.
Oh, okay. All right. Sexy dad bods.
Sexy dad bods, as we create that, I guess.
Good. That's a hot commodity. Mm-hmm. No pun intended, especially in a weird way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a really hot commodity in Wichita. So thank you for bringing that to our community and keeping up dad bods.
Thanks.
That'll do it for this installment of Season 2 with Real Wealth Podcast. Sponsored by Leading Edge Financial Planning, where we help folks make wise financial decisions.